absolutely stricken with an epidemic of willful idiocy that bears no rational excuse. A century ago, such behavior in a culture could have been clocked up to a bottleneck in the flow of concrete information. But today, mankind has a veritable buffet of data at his fingertips at any given moment. Facts and truth can be found with a mere modicum of effort and a remedial passion for learning. We can plead lack of access no longer. Yes, our government and our society have become corrupt to the core. Yes, the traditional sources of information in the mainstream media are utterly useless and dishonest. Yes, our public educational system is completely federalized, and our schools have been warped into lemming factories where young minds are bled dry of all creative power and individuality. Yes, the system we are born into is designed to make us stupid. However, the establishment has not yet been able to extinguish our ability to walk away. We all have a choice to be taught by others or to learn for ourselves. At the end of the day, sheeple are sheeple not because they have to be, but because they want to be. It is this greatest and most exploitable weakness of man, our willingness to sacrifice anything in order to avoid admitting we know nothing. This is the philosophy, the philosophical slum of the common sheeple. It is pathetic and ugly. It is a rampant plague upon the world. The time is coming, very soon, I believe, when the subpopulation of sheeple will be used as cannon fodder to institute change in America on an unprecedented scale. It has happened many times throughout history. The establishment, seeking unlimited power, brandishes the dimmer subsections of the population like a political baseball bat, swinging them about wildly in an attempt to smash the ideological enemies of the state. Often, the sheeple are oblivious to the fact that they're being used as a weapon against liberty and truth. They know only that they must participate to survive, even if that survival ends up being a hollow and meaningless life. Now, more than ever, it is important for the liberty movement to understand and identify who these people are and what makes them tick. Time grows short, and it is easy for us to become mired in the haze of the glassy-eyed herd. Sheeple can be saved from themselves, but only if they can be made to recognize these particular behaviors as part and parcel of their own folly. We have a case of institutionalized laziness. Some sheeple are not ignorant because they're unintelligent. Rather, they're ignorant because they refuse to expend any energy in discovering the facts of their world. They've become used to the idea of being taught rather than going out to learn for themselves. It is easier to be told what to think than it is to develop one's own worldview. Sheeple often state that they just want to be left alone or don't want to think about the troubles of the world, yet nearly all of them at the same time want to feel as though they have an effect on the future. They want the benefits of a sound and balanced society, but they don't want to put in the work to make such a society possible. They want other people to make the system work, and other people are certainly willing to take advantage of sheeple in action. You have arrogance without merit. I've met many people in my life who are not fully aware of how their world works or why terrible things happen to them. This by itself is not necessarily bad. If one is able to accept that he needs to learn more, then he has far surpassed most of society in the strength of his character. Unfortunately, sheeple do not share this attitude. They not only lack remedial knowledge on most issues, but they are also unwilling to admit it. They even viciously attack those who do have substantial information. Is this due to an inferiority complex? Possibly. They are so invested in the mainstream worldview as presented by media entities and government that they take it as gospel. They live the mainstream ideal, but secretly they harbor doubts. They know that they do not have the capacity to defend the system if confronted by an intelligent and well-versed opponent. So, they develop a demeanor of arrogance and contempt for those who question it. This uppity manner is a defense mechanism meant to hide the weakness of their arguments. Combined with ad hominem attacks and physical threats, sheeple try to ward off critics so they don't have to engage in a legitimate debate. They know that they'll lose. They're always worried about what the majority thinks. Sheeple are steeped in the realm of the mainstream, so much so that they have become nothing but a cog in the machine of the collective mind. Their entire existence is predicated on blind faith in the system. If the system is proven to be flawed, then they are proven to be flawed by extension. They will ignore all reason and defend the system wildly, as if trapped by some cult, because their fragile identity is dependent upon the continued prosperity of the establishment. In most cases, sheeple are motivated by nothing but fear. In their early years, they likely either cave to the force of peer pressure and learn to diminish their personal pain by constantly conforming to the majority view, or sought inclusion in the majority very early on and became addicted to the power that the collective is able to wield over others. In either case, they never actually questioned whether or not the majority was right in its behavior. Instead, they decided at some point in their life that the majority is always right simply because it's the majority. Never questioned the professional class. Sheeple are easily impressed by anyone with a nice suit, a uniform, a lab coat, or an embossed diploma, or a title. They see and revere the costume, regardless of the man inside it. For sheeple, titles and positions of arbitrary authority make the opinions of a person more than opinion. His opinions suddenly become law. While a liberty movement activist looks for the legitimacy within the individual professional, the sheeple place all faith within the institution that professional represents. His personal character is of no consequence to them, and the idea that he may have no clue what he's talking about does not even occur to them. They have an obsession with the state because the average sheeple hasn't the slightest inkling of how to be independent or self-sufficient. They attach their survival to the success of the state. They see the world of the state as being sarcastic, and they have no concept of government by the people. They will sing the praises of democratic elections and the will of the public in general participation. But when the state goes against that will and does what it pleases, they'll seek to rationalize this criminality. For them, government might be fallible or not, but this fallibility does not change the finality of state authority. The government is not to be interfered with, and certainly not to be opposed. To stand against the state is to stand against law, and the law, in their mind, is God. Questionings of morality are irrelevant. They have become so far detached from their consciousness that there is nothing left but pitch black void, waiting to be filled with the demands of the oligarchy. When confronted by men who are willing to fight and die to interfere with the abuse of state authority, they respond with shock and revulsion. How could anyone possibly stand against the will of the mainstream and its government champions? How dare they defy the establishment? Predictable responses. Sheeple are highly predictable, two-dimensional creatures. When confronted with their own failings, they will follow a pre-programmed list of responses meant to divert and confuse discussion. They will claim that everyone thinks they're smarter than everyone else, and that the truth is relative. Not so. History does not support this twisted view, however. There are always moments in which some people are morally and intellectually correct, while many others are dangerously misguided. Nazi Germany mean anything to anybody, folks? Some people make decisions that lead to chaos and destruction, while others make decisions that lead to prosperity and creation. The truth, the cold, hard truth, is not relative. It is unyielding, uncompromising, and final. To be successful as human beings requires us to be on the right side of truth more often than we are not. To assume that the truth is malleable to our particular desires of the moment is to always be on the wrong side. Sheeple rely primarily on character assassination and belligerent disregard for logic in order to derail debate. They do not attack your position so much as they attack you personally. They scoff, giggle, and taunt like children, but when it's all over, they usually say very little of any substance. Finally, they will use the weapon of majority opinion as a get-out-of-jail-free card. And in most cases, this is not a ploy. They really do believe that if the larger percentage of the public accepts a conviction, then that conviction automatically becomes fact. Their goal, therefore, is to constantly ride the wave of majority opinion so that they will always be in a position of righteousness. Of course, this way of thinking in the past has led to some of the worst atrocities in history. The collective mind has no concern for individual freedom, including the freedom to live in peace. Violence in the name of conformity is very common in such cultures. Sheeple are puppets in the game of political reconstruction, and it's their job to cheerlead the establishment and to drown out all honest voices. They are generally remorseless as long as they never have to face tangible consequences for their blind support of the system. They seek to strengthen the bars of the prison because the outside world of free thought and expression intimidates and paralyzes them. In an environment where survival is dependent on individual merit and principle, sheeple hold no currency. They hold no capital. This might explain their overt hatred to individualism. When we in the liberty movement seek to unchain and decentralize the world, we indirectly cut the umbilical cord to them. They see our fight for freedom as a threat to their very lives. Sadly, their comfort is derived entirely from our enslavement. That was Brandon Smith's article. Unfortunately, we've run out of time to talk about it, but we'll bring it up again in a later broadcast, definitely want to discuss that article. There are points that I don't necessarily agree with, but most of it I think is dead on. At any rate, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to tonight's show. This has been Tap Into the Truth. This is Tim Tapp saying good night, thanks, God bless, and hope to hear from you again